The dust swirled around Elodie's bare feet. She didn't understand why she was there, standing beside the rough stone wall of the church. It was market day in the small town, usually a time of excitement, of smells of baking bread and the sounds of bartering. But not for her. A gruff man, his face weathered like old leather, held her arm too tight. His breath smelled of stale whiskey. He was talking to another man, a farmer, judging by his calloused hands and sun-beaten neck. They were talking about her, like she was a cow or a sack of potatoes. Elodie stared at the ground, trying to disappear. She was small for her age, barely 10 years old, and her thin dress offered little protection from the judging eyes of the townsfolk. The farmer, his name was Silas, grunted. She's scrawny. Not worth the price of a good meal. The man holding Elodie's arm spat on the ground. She's strong enough. Can fetch water, clean a house. And she's quiet. Won't give you no trouble. Silas looked her up and down one more time, his gaze lingering a little too long. Elodie shivered. Finally, he nodded. All right, but not a penny more than $5. $5. Less than the cost of a mule. The transaction was quick, brutal. A few coins exchanged hands, and suddenly, Elodie belonged to Silas. He led her away from the church, away from the only life she had ever known, however meager it was. She didn't cry. She had learned long ago that tears were a waste of energy. They didn't change anything. She just walked, her head down, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. The world felt gray, and the future stretched before her like a long, empty road. Silas didn't speak to her, didn't offer her food or water. He just kept walking, and she followed, a silent shadow at his heels. As the sun began to set, they arrived at a small, run-down farm. Chickens pecked in the dusty yard, and a skinny dog barked weakly from under the porch. This was her new home. This was her new life. And Elodie knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that it wasn't going to be easy. She was alone, unwanted, and worth less than a mule. The next few weeks were a blur of hard work and silent meals. Silas was a harsh master, demanding and unforgiving. Elodie cleaned, cooked, and tended the chickens, all without a word of thanks or even a nod of acknowledgement. She slept on a straw mattress in the corner of the barn, the only comfort the soft warmth of the hay and the occasional purr of a stray cat. One day, while fetching water from the well, Elodie saw a rider approaching the farm. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor. He wore a worn leather vest and a dusty hat, and he rode a sturdy brown horse. This was Bo Ellis. Bo dismounted and approached Silas, who had come out of the house, wiping his hands on his trousers. Silas, Bo said, his voice low and calm. I heard you were looking for some help with the harvest. Silas eyed Bo suspiciously. I can manage on my own. Maybe, Bo replied, but I saw your fence is down in the south pasture, and you all looks like it needs some work. I could help with that too. Silas hesitated. He knew Bo Ellis. Everyone in the county knew Bo Ellis. He was a fair man, honest and hardworking, and he owned a large ranch just over the ridge. Having him around could be useful. All right, Silas grumbled. I could use the help, but I ain't paying much. We can discuss terms, Bo said. He glanced at Elodie, who was still standing by the well, her eyes wide with curiosity. Who's this? Silas shrugged. Just a girl. Helps around the place. Bo nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on Elodie for a moment longer than necessary. He seemed to see something in her eyes, something that Silas had missed. Bo ended up staying. He fixed the fence, repaired the well, and helped Silas with the harvest. He didn't talk much, but his presence was a comfort to Elodie. He never yelled or swore, and he always treated her with respect, something she wasn't used to. One evening, as Elodie was clearing the table after supper, Bo caught her eye. He smiled, a small, gentle smile that made her heart flutter. Thank you, Elodie, he said. You work hard. It was the first kind word she had heard in weeks. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She mumbled a thank you and hurried back to the barn, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. Maybe there was hope after all. Bo continued to work alongside Silas for several weeks, but Elodie noticed he always kept an eye on her. He'd offer her a cool drink of water on a hot day or a piece of dried apple when Silas wasn't looking. These small acts of kindness were like drops of water on parched earth, slowly bringing her back to life. One afternoon, Silas stormed out of the house, his face red with anger. "That blasted girl," he bellowed. "She ruined my best shirt. Soaked it in lye." Elodie cowered, expecting a beating, but Bo stepped forward, placing himself between Silas and her. "What happened?" he asked calmly. "She's clumsy. Useless." Silas spat. "I'm going to teach her a lesson." Bo's eyes narrowed. "I think you've taught her enough lessons, Silas." He turned to Elodie. "Go to the barn, Elodie. I'll talk to Silas." Elodie didn't need to be told twice. She fled to the barn, her heart pounding in her chest. She huddled in the hay, listening to the muffled sounds of Bo and Silas arguing. She couldn't make out the words, but she could hear the anger in Silas's voice and the quiet determination in Bo's. After what seemed like an eternity, Bo came into the barn. He knelt beside Elodie, his expression gentle. "Are you all right?" he asked. Elodie nodded, unable to speak. "Silas is frustrated," Bo said carefully. "He doesn't understand you. But I do." Elodie looked up at him, her eyes filled with questions. "I've seen that look in your eyes before," Bo continued. "It's the look of someone who's been hurt, someone who's afraid." He reached out and gently touched her hand. His touch was warm and reassuring. "You don't have to be afraid anymore, Elodie," he said. "I'm going to take you away from here." Elodie's breath caught in her throat. "Away," she whispered. "Yes," Bo said. "I'm going to take you to my ranch. You can live with me. You'll have a warm bed, plenty of food, and no one will ever hurt you again." Tears streamed down Elodie's face, but this time they weren't tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of relief, of hope, of gratitude. She had never dared to dream of such a thing. A new life, a safe home, someone who cared about her. It was too good to be true. "But, Silas," she stammered. "I'll take care of Silas," Bo said, his voice firm. "He won't bother you anymore." He stood up and offered her his hand. "Come on, Elodie," he said. "Let's go home." Elodie took his hand, and together they walked out of the barn and into the setting sun, leaving behind the only life she had ever known and stepping into a future filled with hope and possibility. The ride to Bo's ranch was long and silent. Elodie sat stiffly beside Bo on his horse, clutching the small bundle of belongings he had allowed her to gather. She was going to a new home, but the fear of the unknown still gnawed at her. Bo's ranch was nothing like Silas's farm. It was vast and sprawling, with green pastures, a sparkling creek, and a sturdy, well-maintained house. Horses grazed peacefully in the fields, and cattle lowed contentedly in the distance. It was a place of peace and abundance. Bo helped Elodie down from the horse and led her into the house. It was warm and inviting, with a crackling fire in the hearth and the smell of baking bread in the air. A kind-faced woman with silver hair and gentle eyes greeted them at the door. "This is Martha," Bo said. "She takes care of the house." Martha smiled at Elodie. "Welcome, child," she said, her voice soft and comforting. "We're glad to have you here." Martha showed Elodie to her room. It was small but cozy, with a soft bed, a colorful quilt, and a window overlooking the fields. It was the nicest room she had ever had. But despite the comfort and kindness, Elodie remained withdrawn and silent. The trauma of her past had left deep scars. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her voice was barely a whisper. She flinched at loud noises and avoided eye contact. She was like a wounded bird, afraid to trust, afraid to hope. Bo and Martha were patient and understanding. They didn't push her to talk, but they made sure she knew she was safe and loved. They gave her space to heal, to find her own way. Days turned into weeks, and Elodie slowly began to adjust to her new life. She helped Martha with the chores around the house, learning to cook and clean. She spent hours watching Bo work with the horses, fascinated by their strength and grace. She started to venture out into the fields, exploring the ranch and discovering its hidden wonders. But the silence remained. It was a wall she couldn't seem to break through. The words were trapped inside her, locked away by fear and pain. She longed to speak, to laugh, to share her thoughts and feelings, but she didn't know how. The silence was a part of her now, a constant reminder of the life she had left behind. It would take time, patience, and a whole lot of love to break down that wall and set her free. The first crack in Elodie's silence came unexpectedly. She was in a barn, watching Bo tend to a mare that was about to give birth. The mare was restless, pacing in her stall and whinnying softly. Bo spoke to her in a low, soothing voice, stroking her neck and whispering words of encouragement. Suddenly, the mare cried out in pain. Elodie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Without thinking, she blurted out, "She needs help." The words were barely audible, but they were there. Bo looked at her, surprised. "You think so?" he asked gently. Elodie nodded, her eyes wide with concern. "Yes, I saw a birth once. The baby was stuck." Bo studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, help me." Together, they worked to assist the mare, Elodie instinctively knowing what to do. She spoke in short, broken sentences, guiding Bo and offering words of comfort to the mare. And then, finally, with a final push, a foal was born. Elodie stared at the newborn foal, her heart swelling with joy. She had helped bring a new life into the world. A small smile touched her lips. "You did good, Elodie," Bo said, his voice filled with admiration. "You have a gift with animals." Elodie blushed, embarrassed by the praise. But inside, she felt a flicker of pride. She had done something good. She had used her knowledge to help. From that day on, Elodie's silence began to slowly fade. She started to talk more, first in whispers, then in slightly louder tones. She asked questions, shared her thoughts, and even, occasionally, laughed. Bo encouraged her every step of the way. He never pressured her, but he always listened patiently and attentively. He treated her with respect and valued her opinions. He made her feel safe and loved. He taught her to ride a horse, to tend to the cattle, and to read and write. He showed her the beauty of the land and the importance of hard work. He helped her to discover her own strengths and talents. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Bo turned to Elodie and said, "You know, Elodie, you're not that scared little girl anymore." Elodie looked at him, her eyes shining with happiness. "I'm not. No," Bo said, smiling. "You're strong and brave and smart. You could do anything you set your mind to." Elodie smiled back, her heart filled with gratitude. She knew she still had a long way to go, but she also knew that she wasn't alone. She had Bo and Martha and the ranch, and she had her own strength waiting to be unleashed. She was finally finding her voice, and with it, she was finding herself. As Elodie blossomed, so did the bond between her and Bo. It wasn't a father-daughter relationship, though Bo certainly cared for her deeply. It was something more akin to a partnership, a shared understanding built on respect and mutual affection. Bo saw Elodie not as a child to be coddled, but as a capable young woman with a bright future. He valued her opinions and sought her advice on matters concerning the ranch. He taught her everything he knew about ranching, from managing the cattle to reading the weather patterns. Elodie, in turn, admired Bo's strength, his honesty, and his unwavering kindness. She saw him as a protector, a mentor, and a friend. She trusted him implicitly and knew that she could always count on him, no matter what. They spent hours together, riding through the fields, working in the barn, and sharing stories around a campfire. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations flowing easily and naturally. They learned each other's quirks, their strengths, and their weaknesses. One day, while they were branding cattle, a steer broke free from the herd and charged towards Elodie. Bo reacted instantly, tackling the steer to the ground and protecting Elodie from harm. Elodie was shaken but unharmed. She rushed to Bo's side, her eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked. Bo grinned, brushing the dust off his clothes. "I'm fine," he said, "just a little bruised." Elodie threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." Bo hugged her back, his heart swelling with affection. "I'd do anything for you, Elodie," he said. "You know that, don't you?" Elodie nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She knew that Bo's feelings for her were more than just friendship. She had seen the way he looked at her, the way he smiled when she entered the room, the way he always put her needs before his own. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew that she loved Bo with all her heart. He had given her a new life, a safe home, and a reason to hope. And she was determined to repay him with her love and loyalty. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Elodie and Bo stood side by side, their hands touching, their hearts connected. They were no longer just a rancher and a rescued girl. They were a family, bound together by love, trust, and a shared vision for the future. The ranch was their haven, their sanctuary, and the foundation upon which they would build their lives together. Life on the ranch was a constant learning experience for Elodie. Each day brought new challenges and new opportunities for growth. She embraced them all with enthusiasm and determination. She became an expert horsewoman, riding bareback across the fields with the wind in her hair. She learned to rope cattle, mend fences, and brand livestock. She helped Bo with the planting and harvesting of crops, marveling at the bounty of the land. Martha taught her how to cook and bake, how to sew and quilt, and how to care for the sick. She learned about herbs and their healing properties, and she became skilled at treating minor ailments. Bo taught her to read and write, patiently guiding her through the alphabet and helping her to understand the mysteries of language. He shared his love of books with her, and she devoured stories of adventure, romance, and faraway lands. Elodie discovered a passion for learning that she never knew she had. She soaked up knowledge like a sponge, eager to expand her horizons and explore her potential. She realized that she was capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. She also learned about the importance of hard work, perseverance, and resilience. Ranch life was not easy. There were long hours, difficult tasks, and unexpected setbacks. But Elodie learned to face these challenges with courage and determination. She learned to never give up, even when things were tough. As she grew older, Elodie began to take on more responsibility on the ranch. She helped Bo manage the finances, make important decisions, and oversee the day-to-day operations. She became his trusted partner and confidant. She also became a role model for the younger children in the community. She volunteered at the local school, teaching them to read and write. She helped out at the church, organizing events and raising money for those in need. Elodie was no longer just a rescued girl. She was a strong, independent, and accomplished woman. She had found her place in the world, and she was determined to make a difference. She had learned to embrace life with open arms, to cherish the simple joys, and to never take anything for granted. She had transformed from a silent, traumatized child into a confident, compassionate, and capable adult. The ranch had given her a new life, and she was grateful for every moment. She was finally home. The peace and prosperity that Elodie had found on Bo's ranch were shattered one sweltering afternoon. She was tending a vegetable garden near the house when a wagon pulled up the long, dusty driveway. A man she had hoped never to see again stepped down. It was Jebediah, the man who had sold her beside the church. He was older, his face more weathered, but his eyes still held that same cold, calculating glint. Elodie's heart leaped into her throat, and she felt the familiar wave of fear wash over her. Well, Jebediah drawled, his voice raspy. Look what we have here. Little Elodie, all grown up. Elodie stood frozen, unable to speak or move. She wanted to run, to hide, but her feet were rooted to the ground. Heard you were living here, Jebediah continued, his eyes scanning the ranch with greedy interest. Living pretty high on the hog, it seems. Both emerged from the barn, his expression hardening as he took in the scene. He strode towards Elodie, placing himself protectively between her and Jebediah. What do you want, Jebediah? Bo asked, his voice low and dangerous. Just came to pay a visit, Jebediah said, his smile thin and menacing. Heard you were harboring a runaway. Thought I might collect what's rightfully mine. Elodie is not your property, Bo said, his jaw tightening. She's a free woman. Is that so? Jebediah sneered. I have papers to prove otherwise. Papers that say she belongs to me until she's 18. and she ain't 18 yet. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. Elodie's stomach churned. She had never seen the papers, but she knew they existed. They were the chains that had bound her to a life of misery. Bo took the paper and examined it closely. His expression grew grim. "This is worthless," he said, handing the paper back to Jebediah. "It's not legally binding." "Maybe not," Jebediah said, his eyes narrowing. "But I still want what's mine. And if you don't hand her over, I'll make things very difficult for you." He gestured to two burly men who were sitting in the wagon. They climbed down, their faces grim and menacing. Elodie's fear intensified. She knew that Jebediah was not a man to be trifled with. He was ruthless, and he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Her past had come back to haunt her, threatening to destroy the life she had worked so hard to build. The threatening shadow was here. Despite the fear that coursed through her veins, Elodie found a new strength rising within her. She was no longer the helpless girl who had been sold beside the church. She was a woman now, capable and resilient. She had a home, a family, and a life worth fighting for. She stepped forward, placing herself beside Bo. She looked Jebediah directly in the eye, her voice clear and firm. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she said. "This is my home, and I belong here." Jebediah laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you have a choice in the matter? You're just a girl. You can't defy me." "I am not just a girl," Elodie retorted. "I am Elodie Quinn. I will not be bullied or intimidated by you or anyone else." Bo placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes filled with pride. He knew that Elodie had found her voice, her strength, and her independence. "Jebediah," Bo said, his voice calm but resolute, "I'm going to give you one chance to leave. Turn around, get in your wagon, and ride out of here. If you don't, you'll regret it." Jebediah scoffed. "You and what army?" Bo simply nodded towards the ranch hands who had gathered behind him, their faces grim and determined. They were loyal to Bo, and they would not stand by and let Jebediah threaten him or Elodie. Jebediah's bravado faltered. He could see that he was outnumbered and outmatched. He knew that if he tried to take Elodie by force, he would face serious consequences. He hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting back and forth between Bo, Elodie, and the ranch hands. Then, with a muttered curse, he turned and climbed back into his wagon. His two burly companions followed him, their faces sullen. Jebediah cracked the whip, and the wagon lurched forward, heading back down the driveway. Elodie watched them go, her heart pounding in her chest. She had faced her past, and she had emerged victorious. She had found her strength, her voice, and her independence. She knew that Jebediah might return, but she was no longer afraid. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had Bo, her family, and the ranch. And she had herself. That was all she needed. The confrontation was over. The encounter with Jebediah served as a turning point for Elodie. It solidified her sense of self and her determination to live life on her own terms. She realized that she could no longer allow the shadows of her past to dictate her future. She began to take on even more responsibility on the ranch, proving herself to be a capable and resourceful leader. She oversaw the hiring of new ranch hands, negotiated contracts with suppliers, and managed the ranch's finances with skill and precision. Bo trusted her implicitly, recognizing her talent and her unwavering commitment to the ranch. He gave her more and more autonomy, allowing her to make decisions without his input. He knew that she was ready to stand on her own 2 feet. Elodie also became more involved in the community, using her newfound influence to advocate for the less fortunate. She established a fund to help families in need, providing them with food, clothing, and medical care. She also worked to improve the local school, ensuring that all children had access to a quality education. She became a powerful voice for women in the region, encouraging them to pursue their dreams and to challenge the traditional gender roles that limited their opportunities. She spoke out against injustice and inequality, inspiring others to stand up for what they believed in. Elodie's independence extended to her personal life as well. She made it clear to Beau that while she loved and respected him, she was not willing to be confined by traditional expectations. She wanted to be his partner, not his possession. Beau understood and respected her wishes. He admired her strength and her determination to live life on her own terms. He knew that she was not afraid to be different, to challenge the status quo, and to forge her own path. Their relationship evolved into something even deeper and more meaningful. They were partners, friends, and lovers, bound together by a shared vision for the future and a deep and abiding love for each other. Elodie had finally claimed her own land, her own name, and her own family. She was no longer just a rescued girl. She was a woman of substance, character, and unwavering determination. She had stood her ground, asserted her independence, and created a life that was truly her own. The transformation was complete. She was Elodie Quinn. The years that followed were filled with joy, challenges, and unwavering love. Elodie and Beau built a life together that was defined by their choices, their love, and their strength. They expanded the ranch, adding new acreage, new livestock, and new opportunities for growth. They invested in the community, building a new school, a new hospital, and a new library. They created jobs, provided opportunities, and made a positive impact on the lives of countless people. Elodie continued to be a force for change, advocating for women's rights, fighting against injustice, and inspiring others to reach their full potential. She became a mentor to young women, guiding them, supporting them, and empowering them to achieve their dreams. She also found time to pursue her own passions. She became an accomplished artist, painting landscapes that captured the beauty and the spirit of the West. She wrote poetry that expressed her deepest thoughts and feelings. She traveled the world, exploring new cultures, meeting new people, and expanding her horizons. But above all else, Elodie cherished her relationship with Beau. Their love grew stronger with each passing year, deepening into a bond that was unbreakable. They were partners in every sense of the word, sharing their joys, their sorrows, and their dreams. One warm summer evening, as they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Beau turned to Elodie and took her hand. "Elodie," he said, his voice filled with love, "will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Elodie's eyes. She had waited for this moment for so long. "Yes, Beau," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Their wedding was a simple but beautiful affair, held on the ranch with their family and friends gathered around them. Elodie wore a white dress that Martha had made for her, and Beau wore his best suit. They exchanged vows that were heartfelt and sincere, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. As they stood hand in hand, looking out over the vast expanse of the ranch, Elodie knew that she had finally found her happily ever after. She had overcome her past, found her strength, and built a life that was filled with love, joy, and purpose. She was Elodie Quinn Ellis, and she was finally home. Her choices, her love, and her strength had defined her life. Marriage brought a new depth and richness to Elodie and Beau's already strong relationship. They were more than just partners and lovers. They were husband and wife, committed to building a life together, supporting each other through thick and thin, and creating a home filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. They worked side by side on the ranch, their teamwork seamless and efficient. They shared the responsibilities of managing the business, caring for the animals, and maintaining the property. They relied on each other's strengths and supported each other's weaknesses. They also made time for each other, setting aside evenings for quiet dinners, horseback rides under the stars, and long conversations by the fire. They cherished these moments of intimacy and connection, knowing that they were the foundation of their strong and lasting marriage. As the years passed, Elodie and Beau began to talk about starting a family. They both longed to have children, to share their love and their values with a new generation. After several years of trying, Elodie discovered that she was pregnant. She and Beau were overjoyed. They spent the next 9 months preparing for the arrival of their child, decorating the nursery, buying baby clothes, and reading books about parenting. The day that Elodie went into labor was one of the most intense and emotional days of their lives. Bo stayed by her side throughout the entire ordeal, offering words of encouragement, holding her hand, and wiping her brow. After hours of labor, Elodie gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Mara Belle, after Elodie's mother and Bo's grandmother. As they held their newborn daughter in their arms, Elodie and Bo were filled with an overwhelming sense of love and gratitude. They had created a new family, a family that was built on love, trust, and unwavering commitment. They knew that their lives would never be the same, and they couldn't wait to embark on this new chapter together. The new family had arrived. The marriage was complete. Mara Belle Ellis grew up surrounded by love, warmth, and the vast beauty of the ranch. She was a bright and spirited child, with her mother's determination and her father's kindness. Elodie and Bo poured all their love and attention into Mara, teaching her the values that they held dear: honesty, integrity, compassion, and hard work. They taught her to ride horses, tend to the animals, and appreciate the beauty of nature. They read her stories, sang her songs, and encouraged her to dream big. Elodie was determined to give Mara the childhood that she herself had never had. She wanted her daughter to grow up feeling safe, loved, and empowered. She wanted her to know that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. As Mara grew older, she began to show a keen interest in the ranch. She loved working alongside her parents, learning the ins and outs of the business. She had a natural talent for managing the cattle and a deep understanding of the land. Elodie and Bo were thrilled to see Mara following in their footsteps. They knew that the ranch would be in good hands when she eventually took over. Mara also inherited her mother's passion for helping others. She volunteered at the local school, mentored younger children, and advocated for the less fortunate. She became a powerful voice for change in the community, just like her mother. One day, as Mara was riding through the fields with her parents, she turned to them and said, "I am so grateful for everything you've given me. I can't imagine a better life than this." Elodie and Bo smiled at each other, their hearts filled with pride. They had built a life that was defined by their choices, their love, and their strength. And they had passed those values on to their daughter. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Elodie, Bo, and Mara rode side by side, their hands touching, their hearts connected. They were a family bound together by love, trust, and a shared vision for the future. Elodie's journey, from a girl sold for less than a mule to a woman who had claimed her own land, name, and family, had come full circle. The future had arrived, and it was bright. Mara Belle, a symbol of hope and a testament to the power of love, would carry on their legacy for generations to come. The end.